Hello and welcome to Politics Today, reaching you live, not politics, lunchtime politics, I should say, reaching you live from the nation's commercial nerve center, Lagos. I'm Jeff Ruzam, and this is our global headquarters, and there's a lot going on as we speak. The APC primaries for the House of Assembly election is going on across the country. But let's bring you up to speed with the big stories we're tracking at this very moment. All Progressives Congress holds assembly primaries across the country as controversy trails the National Assembly primaries with potential litigation brewing. Vice President Shettima says his kingsmen accused him before President Tinubu on ICE planning to kill the commander-in-chief in order to take over the country's leadership. And the Turaki-led group of the PDP claims it has granted waiver to former President Goodluck Jonathan to run as candidate of the PDP for the presidential election next year. Thanks again for joining us on the program where we'll give you the all-access pass, so everything politics in the polity. And of course, governance may be taking a back chair because there's a lot of politicking going on with primaries across the board. But let's start with what happened at the presentation or public presentation of the autobiography of former head of state General Yakubu Gowon, titled "My Life of Duty and Allegiance," held in Abuja. Speaking at the event, former President Goodluck Jonathan and the author emphasized the need for politicians to desist from the acts that could jeopardize the country's peace.
We all remember General Gowon. Every leader, if anybody who have the opportunity to become the president of a country, will be remembered from one thing or the other. But there are two key things that we remember leaders: policies that endure, policies that reform society, policies that change things. Then, of course, major infrastructure.
The author says on page 240, the idea of Aburi was to have an exploratory event meant to break the ice, remove the veil of suspicion, and engender trust among the key actors. A sort of gentleman's agreement. This is what General Gowon, as head of state, went to Aburi hoping for. But Ojukwu had a completely different text, because Ojukwu says, if you read, because I'm involved, a few other things that suggest that, as far as Ojukwu was concerned, Aburi was one to try and answer the question of how did Ironsi die and who killed Ironsi.
Each time I reflect on my service to my country, I become further persuaded that Nigeria can get better and achieve her potentials as the giant of Africa. On my watch as head of state, the country did not fall, and I am confident that the nation, despite all its challenges, still will not fall.
There are only differences, but we are bound together by so many things.
We need to be peace agents, all of us in Nigeria.
Trust quotient in the country is super low. That's why if you want to christen the theme of yesterday's gathering of these heads of state, it talks about trust. And that's why the vice president made a revelation how his kingsmen had accused him of trying to kill President Ballot Tinubu in order to take over barely 3 months into when the president assumed office.
Permit me to pay tribute to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on a similar episode. When we were campaigning for him to emerge as the aspirant of the APC, we are going around the north. You know, we the people of Borno, unlike the Sokoto people, we are the best dressed northerners. So, you know, so I got some wagon body materials and caps for him to blend with the northern crowd. So and it fitted him very well. So his aides were saying, please produce more. It fitted him. Barely 3 months when we were sworn into office, some of my people from Borno came to him and said, please stop wearing those Shettima clothes. He must have charmed them, and you are going to die, and he will become the president. Just barely 3 months, and to the eternal credit of the president. When I came back from China, where I represented him at the Bells and Roads Initiative conference, he said, sit down. Your people came to me and said, I should stop wearing those dresses you gave me. But he said their story did not add up, because when you gave me those dresses, I was an aspirant. I wasn't the candidate. Neither were you the vice presidential candidate. For 1 week, to prove to them that he is not fetish, he wore those dresses. These are some of the gimmicks that is taking place in power cycles in Nigeria nowadays.
That's how politicians don't even trust themselves, not to trust other people. But let's talk about something else, where the gains of the EFCC. Now it has arrested the former Minister of Power, Salim Ahmed, who was declared wanted after his conviction and sentenced by Justice James Omotoso in absentia. He was sentenced to 75 years in jail.
I'm happy to announce to Nigerians that at about 3:30 a.m. this morning, we arrested Mr. Salim Ahmed somewhere in Kaduna. This is a test of the commitment of the federal government of Nigeria to the fight against corruption in Nigeria, and to assure Nigerians that anyone who has pilfered government or national resources will not go unpunished. And the eagle eye of Economic and Financial Crimes Commission will always catch up with you wherever you are hiding. So it's important for us to let Nigerians know that we are working. There is no area that we will not go into. We will not leave any area unturned or untouched, just for us to ensure that we fulfill our mandate and to assure Nigerians that we will uphold our mandate, ensure that everyone, whether private or public person who has stolen Nigerian money, will be investigated and be brought to book. We have discovered that it was actually being protected all this while. And where we effected the arrest, we've arrested 2 other Nigerians with him alongside. And also the property, the ownership of the property and all of that, they are still under investigation, because it's actually a crime for you to harbor or to protect or to give a protection to a convicted felon.
From there, let's talk about what is playing out in the group led by Turaki Tanimu of the People's Democratic Party. They said they've granted automatic ticket to former President Goodluck Jonathan to contest in the 2027 presidential election. Although we haven't heard from President Jonathan, they said they granted him that waiver to come run on their platform.
The party had given him waiver to come and start following. In other words, he has been declared and cleared as the candidate of the PDP for the presidential election, and that is President Jonathan. So our committee is on. Anytime the other people within the screening period, we will continue the screening exercise and passing people. We are very happy that even those who have been attempting to kill the party cannot succeed, and the party will contest this election by the grace of God and by the Constitution of Nigeria.
The confusion in political parties, maybe since 2015, this period is one of the most confusing times to even look at political parties. Even the ruling party, there are issues, although they are managing it because, you know, they are the ones in power. Let me bring in my guest that will help us make sense of what is playing out on the political landscape. Literally Game of Thrones in some parts of the country, depending on where you look. Mr. Okolugbo is an APC chieftain, a public affairs analyst. He also served as a consultant on communications to the Senate President. Mr. Okolugbo, good to have you on the program. This is afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the program. All right, while you're trying to get that sorted out, I hope you can also unmute your device. But I will, if that is sorted, let's see where we can start from. It's not Uhuru yet for the APC, especially with the National Assembly elections concluded, but results not officially announced at the national level, which is what I understand to be the direction or the directive from the NWC, that House of Representatives as well as the Senate results will be announced at the national level. But we've seen results announced across the state. What do you make of what is playing out?
Well, the thing about it is, thank you for having me. Are you hearing me now?
I think we can hear you a bit, but go ahead, Mr. Okolugbo.
You can hear me a bit?
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
All right. So the results have come across, but for the National Assembly, I think the party made it very clear that the official results will eventually be declared by the national headquarters of the party, because National Assembly elections are usually treated by the national headquarters. If you remember, the screening of even the National Assembly aspirants, both for the House of Rep and for the Senate, was clearly done in Abuja. But, you know, everybody is eager to put up the figures they have gotten, because most of these aspirants had their agents across the world where the elections took place. And those agents would have fed them with the figures that they have gotten. But if you also agree with me, this option A4 was not a very good option to deploy in my own assessment, because except for where there were consensus and affirmation, you see that areas where there was competition, there was a lot of videos that you can access that would impugn on the integrity of the process. And I did even say that on my Facebook page, even on my Twitter handle, like Kenny Okolugbo, a lot of people inboxed me and were like, oh, how are we proud of what we are seeing? Where people are counting from 1 to 200, from 200 to 500 and all that. But in all, there a lot of consensus arrangement did work, Geoffrey. And you can agree that if it was consensus all the way, the way the polity is heated now would not be the same. In some of these states, not all the states, in some of the states, really.
Yeah, so let's begin with your own state. I think I saw Senator Ned Nwoko yesterday making a case. He feels he won that election, the primaries, but the people who came to conduct the election, I understand they've announced Senator, if I recall, a former governor, I think they announced about 113,000 voters against Senator Nwoko's, I think it's less than 5,000. I can't remember the exact number. But he's been on TV saying, look, it's a sham, that he believes that the president, I remember he spoke about the president a couple of times. Is it that, talking about the president, he doesn't believe that the people that were sent from the NWC are doing the right thing? Or what's your interpretation? And that's your area in Delta North.
Yeah, but you see, this is why the NWC clearly said, look, results should not be announced at the local level. Because for me, there's an appeal committee. Remember I said that on that committee when it was the zonal congress in Northeast, you must wait for the appeal committee to finish its work. When the appeal committee finishes its work, then the NWC will ratify the results. So when you announce results at an early stage where people have different videos showing that what was on ground was not a true reflection of some of the results that have been announced, you overheat the polity. And so I think if the instructions from the National Organizing Secretary, which was confirmed by the National Secretary of the party, we adhered to, most of these conflicts will not arise. And I think what we should do at this point is to encourage everybody to be patient, let the appeal committee weigh in on all the claims that have been made. Then the National Working Committee will ratify and come out with a position, because evidences are going to be reviewed by the appeal committee from all the aspirants. And those evidences will form the basis on which they can take their decision. And the National Working Committee would come out with a bold decision. But don't forget that when you say the president is the leader of the party. The president doesn't want a situation whereby his party will be immersed in all these controversies. And so that's why he said that maybe the option A4 in the areas where there was contest could have been maybe changed into open secret ballot, which would have been better. Other areas could have been explored. I think this is also a challenge for maybe when there are amending the constitution in the 11th Assembly to take a look again at this issue of consensus and direct primaries. But there are areas that was quite peaceful. Like if you look at Akwa Ibom, for example, you didn't hear any stories from Akwa Ibom. If you look at Enugu, you didn't hear any stories from Enugu because there have been understanding amongst the players in those states. That's when I mean the players, the members of the APC. But there were areas where you would have expected that this were. You remember I was on this studio and I did one that look if certain parameters are not reached between those who see themselves or are legacy members of the party and those who have joined the party, you will definitely have this kind of conflict. It's not also it's an open secret that a lot of people have a couple of people who were aspirants who bought forms for the primaries in the APC have left for the NDC in Delta State. So these are the things that we should try to avoid, because when you take on that policy of winners take all and you don't want to engage and you come with this impression of no, I don't need you, you can go to hell. It's the bane of where you find challenges in a political party. Because when you throw up candidates who did not come up through a process that is acceptable, you make rigging inevitable and you weaken the structures of the party. You see some people remaining in the party to sabotage the party, and you forget that you're going for an election in January and in February 2027. So you must have that at the back of your mind. Like, for example, if you look at my the House of Assembly elections today in my local government, for example, it's a consensus. The candidate, Honorable Chuks emerged as a consensus candidate, and so his only go by affirmation. We all supported him from the onset, and it cuts across.
Mr. Okolugbo, if I may comment,
to find such
my apologies. If I may comment, there are some things onlookers, watchers like you, I'm sure also, you are not just a politician, you're also a public affairs analyst. It's very disturbing that the open ballots, which is a method to facilitate the option A4, in some cases has become even more fraudulent than anything, because we've seen people count 100 and they say 200 and they say 250, all kinds of fraudulent kinds of counting that we see videos emerging from social media. In fact, some people are saying they are contesting the election and no executive from the state coming to the world to conduct election. They didn't even have the luxury of losing honorably. More like the governor or whoever is a powerful person in that area writes the result and that's it. And the reason I'm saying this is because the Constitution or the Electoral Act has given parties the option to how they want to conduct their own primaries. But this looks like it was supposed to be transparent. It looks like this is even more fraudulent. I would like you to speak to that. And then the second part, you may say Akwa Ibom, Enugu, and a couple of other states are peaceful, but Vanguard is reporting, but we're still waiting for the numbers to be concluded, based on the local announcement, that maybe almost 70 members of the APC who are incumbent senators may not return. Isn't that very disturbing?
That's why I said it's very disturbing, because if you want the stability of the parliament, at least 50% should be able to return, even if you don't say 100%. But in most parliaments, people even recommend that it should be almost 80 to 100%. You know, there are certain sacrifices that you have to make, even if you're an aspirant, and there are certain parameters you also have to look at in terms of when you say zone. But you see, like the ones you talked about, the figures were quite. I said it already on my Facebook page. I didn't put water in my mouth to say it. That's the difference. I won't keep quiet and people will just keep lying to the president that all is well when he's not well. This open secret ballot, there must be a look at it. They must look at it again. That is what using option A4. Like I was on ground for the senatorial race. A lot of the figures that were bandied were not figures that tallied with what was on ground. You see where people will tell you that they have had over 6,000 votes. How can 6,000 people queue up? Is it possible for 6,000 people to queue up in one straight line? It's impossible for 6,000 people to queue up in one straight line and you're able to count them. Do you understand? So such figures, when it becomes superficial, you ask yourself, is this a reality of the situation you have? But you see, the beautiful thing about it is that, like I said, this will have to be cured by the National Working Committee of my party, because the ill feelings, the bad blood that has been generated, you can't deny that fact that these things have caused a whole lot of. Maybe you look at it as a setback, which is not impossible for you to cure, because it is very obvious that a healing process, a reconciliation process, a committee must be set up immediately to stop people from, leaving the party to the opposition and working against the interest of the party, and some even remaining. That is even the most fearful aspect, who will just keep quiet but will work against the interest of the party eventually, if
I
these
think,
things are not
yes,
taken
I think
care of.
the latter should be the greater worry. And given the numbers, if we stay by the Vanguard report, let's even drop it down a bit to maybe 65 or so. That is still huge. Do you think there's anything that can resolve this kind? If 70 people wanted to come back, there's a difference between the 2023. The 2023 was because of the OB effect that knocked off a lot of the incumbent. This is within the party itself, knocking off itself. Is this something that can be resolved?
No, do you think he's up to 70? Like you rightly said, you said 65. Because don't forget that a couple of the governors, like someone like Senator Mustafa, Senator Solomon Yayi, a lot of them are going to be contesting in tomorrow's Google primaries. So those ones have naturally did not want to come back. I might not have the exact figure of the amount of senators that are coming back now, but it would be a worry if what Vanguard has said is true, that they did not get the ticket to come back. Because first of all, it's still left full of the life of the 10th Assembly. It will also impact on the legislation in the National Assembly, both in the Senate and in the House of Reps. But as a party, I believe in the fact that the chairman of the party has an uphill task, but it's not one that he cannot surmount. He would have to call the meeting of the National Working Committee once these processes have been concluded, and before the names are sent to INEC, they will review the appeal reports and come out with the official position. Don't forget that the party has also warned that whatever results that you're hearing now are not the official position. The official position can only be said when the National Working Committee comes up with his final report. You remember the National Working Committee came up with his final report of those who have been cleared and those who have not been cleared. And we could see for ourselves those who could participate in the elections and those who could not participate in the elections. So I think we should just exercise a bit of patience. After today's House of Assembly primaries, tomorrow is the governorship. We're also all going to be on ground. For example, in my state, Governor Sheriff Oborevwori has nobody challenging him. So it's also going to be an affirmation. So you don't expect that there's going to be bad blood or disputes in that aspect. So these are a few areas that we'll have to, pass. Governorship, there are some states that are going to be hotly contested, like Rivers, and a few others that the governors are leaving, the incumbent governors are leaving. Like in Lagos State, you don't expect Hamzat to have any challenger. It's all going to be affirmation for someone like Hamzat. And so it makes it easier. That's why we keep saying consensus makes it easier than when you have competition that has not been agreed upon. There's always a whole lot that comes out in competition, especially in these areas. It may be in a more advanced climate like America that is having primaries across the 6 states. You saw what happened to Cassidy. Cassidy was prime. The effect of Trump candidates, made Cassidy a casualty, but he did not say he was rigged out of the process. Even the House of Reps elections that is costing over $30 million is also going to be another casualty.
Yes,
You
because
understand? But that
this
is
thing.
a climb where you can count the votes without so much inflation as we see in Africa.
Yes, Mr. Okolugbo, with elections, you and I know that sometimes benefiting from an exercise is because of the failure of somebody to do or not do something. Now, the hegemony seems to be running the game. Lagos, for instance, Desmond Elliott has been fighting the battle of his life. He's been there 12 years. He wants to run for another. He wants to go for a 16th year, and they said, no, you're not going anywhere. When he was talking right here on this table, he was talking to my colleague, and he began to talk about the issue of that he was not aware that when they were signing, that approval did not come from the president. I just felt sad, closing my face in shame. It looks like the more we say that houses of assembly are literal appendages of governors. This is just a clear case that they don't have a mind of their own, and it's very shameful. I'm saying that to say that some of the legislation we see, because the APC is in the majority at the National Assembly, is the APC legislating for itself or for the nation? Look at what happened with the amendment of the order, standing orders of the Senate. They reversed themselves when they saw that one of their orders would be against Section 52 of the Constitution. Of course, it's going to be null and void because they didn't want, if you're not sworn in, you cannot be part of an election of the principal officer like the Senate President Deputy. And then they left this order 3.5 that the senator shall not be eligible to contest for any principal office of Senate unless he serves as a senator for at least 2 consecutive terms immediately preceding such nomination. This looks like party self-preservation or individual self-preservation than national interest. Do you agree with me?
No, knowing legislators they're also bound to make mistakes. So the fact that you can see that order was withdrawn by the majority leader of the Senate, it clearly tells you that they went back to the drawing board and they saw the lacunas. That is not an indictment on the entire Senate. If, for example, they saw the lacunas and they left it, then you can say that, the Senate has pushed on with a legislation that it's not in tandem with the Constitution. Politics is local. Everybody also has their local interest, but you cannot maybe use your local interest to succeed when it's in conflict with the Constitution. And so it's not about the local interest that was at play per se, because that is the impression everybody has given. The withdrawal is a clear testimony that they are ready to also accept when mistakes are made. And the battle for the National Assembly, it's so competitive now. Why is it that competitive? But people have also realized that the legislature is the only arm of government that is always endangered. Even when you have military governments, you have the judiciary and you have the executive, but you don't have the legislature. There is always decrees that are issued in place of laws being made. Yes, we all know that for the House of Assemblies are an appendage of the governors, and for them to become free, they must be able to fight the amendments that would give them that freedom to be able to assert themselves. But how many governors want the Houses of Assembly to assert themselves? They all fear the fact that it can lead to their own impeachment. Desmond Elliott is my friend, and I do feel for him in terms of the fact that his elections are going on today. I know he has an uphill task because we know what it is like when the leaders of the place have said, no, wait, it is no more, you no more have our blessings. But to point to the fact that the president should give instructions, I don't think that was a very good. That was a good information to let out to the public. It doesn't.
All right, Mr. Okolugbo, we're totally out of time. It's always an interesting time talking to you. One of the sections, this standing order 535, has literally placed a barricade or a blockade on Uzodinma Okowa in case they're interested in being Senate President. But you know, the National Assembly.
Well, why do you point to Uzodinma Okowa? They're not yet in the Senate, so why do you think
if they win their elections, that's what I'm saying. If they win.
Oji Okalu is also there. He's one. So many other people are there.
Yeah,
but don't you think that Akpabio deserves to come back?
Well, his colleagues. I don't want to say what I want to say.
I think he's done well.
But I don't even go there. Let's not even get started.
I think you want me to go there, but I think he's done well in my own assessment.
Don't worry, Nigerians. Go and ask Nigerians how well or not Akpabio has done. They are our board of trustees. They are the ones that can fire the president. But thank you, Okolugbo. Again, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And that's it on the program. Thank you for your time and company. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. You've been served on Lunchtime Politics. Bye-bye.
The future of Nigeria, infinite potential.